The camp of Israel stretched across the plains of Moab like an ocean of tents shimmering beneath the morning sun. Smoke from cooking fires curled gently into the sky as thousands prepared for a moment that would change their nation's destiny forever. Moses was gone. His voice, once a constant anchor, had faded into history. Now stood Joshua, son of Nun, a man who had seen giants fall and seas split, yet still felt the tremble of responsibility in his heart. Israel looked to him not as a soldier, but as the leader chosen by God himself. Joshua walked slowly toward the raging Jordan River. Swollen by the spring harvest flood, it roared with a violent force, smashing against its banks like a creature determined to halt Israel's progress. How could 2 million people cross this furious barrier? How could he, a man who had always followed Moses, now lead alone? Joshua knelt, allowing the spray of the river to wet his face. In the silence, God's voice came again, steady and unshakable. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. At dawn, Joshua ordered the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant to step forward. Israel held its breath. As the priests' feet touched the water, something unimaginable happened. The river shuddered, as though struck by an invisible hand. Upstream, the water stood upright like a towering wall, and the riverbed dried instantly. A path opened, wide and firm, inviting the nation to cross. Awe swept through the people as families, soldiers, and elders stepped onto ground where moments earlier no man could stand. Hour after hour, the procession continued until the final Israelite reached the western bank. Joshua then commanded 12 stones to be taken from the riverbed and built into a memorial. These stones, he said, will remind your children that God's power is not a story. It is our history. As night spread across Canaan, Joshua walked alone toward the silhouette of Jericho. Its walls rose like cliffs, impenetrable and proud. Behind those stones waited enemies, challenges, and tests that would shape the future of God's people. Yet Joshua felt no fear. The God who had pushed back the Jordan would push back anything that dared stand in the way of his promise. The conquest of Canaan had begun. Jericho stood like a fortress carved by giants. Its double walls, thick as towers, enclosed a city prepared for siege. Torches flickered along the ramparts, revealing armed guards scanning the horizon every night. Word of the Jordan miracle had reached them, and fear had rooted deep in every heart. No one entered. No one left. The city braced for the assault of Israel's mysterious God. But when Joshua sought God for a battle plan, the instructions he received were unlike any strategy conceived on earth. There were no battering rams, no flaming arrows, no siege ramps. Instead, Israel warriors, priests, and all were to walk silently around the city once a day for 6 days. Only the eerie, mournful sound of rams' horns would echo across the walls. On the 7th day, they would march 7 times, and then the people would shout with all their might. God himself would tear down Jericho. The people obeyed. On the first morning, Jericho's inhabitants crowded at the top of the walls, bewildered, watching thousands march in complete silence. Children tugged at their mothers' sleeves, asking why the enemy did not attack. Soldiers gripped their spears nervously, unsure when the real assault would begin. In a simple home built against the wall, Rahab watched through her window. The scarlet cord hung outside like a fragile promise of salvation. She had sheltered the Israelite spies and declared her faith in the God of heaven and earth. Now she waited, her heart pounding each time the priest's horn sounded. On the 7th day, at the 7th march, tension filled the air like a storm about to break. Then came the signal, the long, piercing blast of the ram's horn. Joshua lifted his hand and shouted, "For the Lord has given you the city." Tens of thousands of voices exploded into the sky. The earth shook violently beneath them. Cracks zigzagged across Jericho's walls. With a thunderous roar, the massive structure collapsed inward, burying the city in dust and ruin. Israel surged forward, capturing Jericho just as God had promised. Rahab and her family, protected by the scarlet cord, were safely brought out. That day, Israel learned a lesson that would guide every future battle. Victory did not come through human strength, but through unwavering obedience to God. Jericho stood like a fortress carved by giants. Its double walls, thick as towers, enclosed a city prepared for siege. Torches flickered along the ramparts, revealing armed guards scanning the horizon every night. Word of the Jordan miracle had reached them, and fear had rooted deep in every heart. No one entered. No one left. The city braced for the assault of Israel's mysterious God. The fall of Jericho sent fear rippling across the land. Kings formed alliances, armies rallied, and war drums sounded in the valleys of Canaan. But Joshua pressed forward, leading Israel through campaign after campaign. Some battles were swift and miraculous. Others were long, exhausting, and demanded the courage of every warrior who fought under God's banner. Yet in each one, Joshua witnessed God's power in ways no general had ever seen. In the southern campaign, 5 kings united their armies against Gibeon, a city that had made peace with Israel. Joshua marched through the night to defend them. At dawn, the battlefield erupted into chaos as swords clashed and enemies scattered. Then God hurled massive hailstones from the sky, stones so heavy that more enemies died from the hail than from Israel's blades. As the remaining armies fled, Joshua saw the sun sinking too quickly. Victory required more time. Raising his voice toward the heavens, he cried, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon." And the sun stopped, stretching daylight across the land until the battle was won. These victories were breathtaking, yet not every challenge came from outside. At Ai, Israel suffered defeat because of hidden sin within the camp. Joshua tore his clothes in grief, realizing that conquering the land meant nothing if the nation did not walk in holiness. After dealing with the sin, Israel returned to Ai and claimed victory. Through triumphs and failures, Joshua taught the people that the land was not merely a physical inheritance, it was a spiritual calling. Years passed. City after city fell. Israel fought in valleys where the dust rose like smoke, and in mountain passes where their shouts echoed through the cliffs. When the final major kings were subdued, the land finally grew quiet. Under the shade of trees in Shiloh, Joshua gathered the leaders of every tribe. Before them lay maps drawn on parchment, stones marking boundaries, and lots prepared to be cast. Each tribe received its portion: fertile fields, rugged hills, ancient forests assigned not by human preference, but by God's sovereign will. Families who had wandered homeless for 40 years now received land on which to build homes, plant vineyards, and raise children. Joshua watched them with satisfaction, but also with concern. Peace, he knew, could be more dangerous than war. Sensing that his life's journey neared its final chapter, Joshua summoned all Israel to gather at Shechem, a sacred place where Abraham had once built an altar generations earlier. From distant territories, the tribes traveled, elders leaning on staffs, warriors carrying their swords, mothers holding young children who would inherit the land Joshua had fought to secure. The crowd stretched across the valley like waves in the sea. Standing before them, Joshua's voice carried the strength of a man who had walked with God through miracles and bloodshed. He recounted their story not to praise Israel, but to glorify the one who had guided them. He spoke of Abraham's call, the slavery in Egypt, the plagues, the Red Sea, the wilderness, the Jordan River, Jericho, and every victory since. As his words echoed across the assembly, the people felt the weight of their history settle on their hearts. Joshua's eyes, though aged, still burned with conviction. "Now fear the Lord and serve him faithfully," he urged. "Choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." The people answered with passion that they would remain faithful. But Joshua knew the human heart was fragile and easily drawn away by comfort. He raised a massive stone beneath an ancient oak and declared it a witness to their promise. It would stand for generations as a reminder that loyalty to God was the foundation of their existence. Among the crowd stood Rahab, now living peacefully among Israel. Her journey from a condemned city to a redeemed life was a symbol of God's mercy woven into Israel's history. Around her, children played children whose laughter echoed through a land once filled with war cries. It was a new season, a new hope. When the assembly ended, Joshua returned to Timnath-Serah, the land he had received. There, surrounded by hills he once fought to claim, he completed his days in quiet peace. Israel buried him with honor, recognizing him not merely as a warrior, but as a leader whose courage was rooted in trust, not strength. Joshua's life became a legacy whispered through generations, that God keeps every promise, that courage is born from faith, and that victory belongs to those who obey even when the path makes no sense. His story would live on, shaping the hearts of all who walked the land he helped conquer.